All right, hello everybody. My name is Jared Carson. I'm a tutor here at the CSUF Writing Center. And today we're going to be doing a quick workshop on how to correct common grammar mistakes and avoid them in your future writing. There's a lot of potential grammar mistakes you can make, but the ones we're going to be focusing on today are run-on sentences, comma splices, and sentence fragments. So first let's talk about sentence structure. Every sentence in English requires a subject, which is a noun or pronoun that functions as like the main kind of character in your sentence, and a predicate, which is the verb that acts upon the subject or explains something about it or changes something about it. These two components make an independent clause, which is the basic building block of a sentence. Every sentence requires an independent clause. So in our example that I have here on the screen, we practiced writing. Something simple like that, just 3 words, is a complete sentence because you have your subject, which is we, you have your predicate or verb, which is practiced, and then a direct object, which is writing. So that explains exactly what you practiced. Direct object isn't necessary. The main components here are the subject and the predicate. So our first mistake is going to be run-on sentences. Run-on sentences occur when you have 2 or more independent clauses and you combine them into the same sentence without using conjunctions or punctuation marks that are required in that sense. As I have noted here, contrary to popular belief, run-on sentences aren't always long. A really long sentence isn't always a run-on either. So it's just about whether or not you're connecting the independent clauses correctly. So in this example here, we have the first independent clause, my dog ate my homework. And then the second independent clause, which we have in the same sentence, is I have to do it again. There's no punctuation other than the period at the end of the sentence. There's no conjunction to connect these 2 independent clauses. So it is a run-on sentence. Our solution to something like this would be to add that conjunction or punctuation or split the sentences into 2 separate sentences. So I've outlined the boundaries of these clauses. So my dog ate my homework is the first clause, I have to do it again is the second one. You could either turn it into my dog ate my homework and then add a comma and a conjunction so that you can connect it to the other independent clause correctly. Or you can use a period between homework and I and create a new sentence. Our next mistake is a comma splice. A comma splice is a type of run-on sentence where 2 independent clauses are combined using a comma, but there are still no conjunctions or conjunctive adverbs present, so therefore the comma is being used incorrectly there. Commas are meant to be used to create pauses in your writing. Where necessary, they're often found before conjunctions or around dependent clauses. However, in this case, like this example here, Sam likes the color blue, comma, Amy likes the color orange. 2 separate clauses. There is no conjunction here to combine these. So having just the comma there is incorrect. That's a comma splice. The simple solution here is to use a semicolon. Semicolons have that purpose. They are meant to combine independent clauses that are related without the need for a conjunction. Just having the semicolon between the 2 sentences would be correct. As here, Sam likes the color blue, semicolon, Amy likes the color orange. That is completely grammatically correct. If you don't want to use the semicolon, you can instead elect to add a conjunction after the comma. As I said before, commas are usually seen near conjunctions. So the alternative is Sam likes the color blue, and, which is our conjunction here, Amy likes the color orange. And then that would correct the comma splice. So the last mistake we're going to be talking about today is a sentence fragment. Sentence fragments are basically incomplete sentences. They happen when an independent clause either lacks a subject or a verb, which is necessary, or when a dependent clause, which is usually tacked on to an independent clause to either further describe something or give context or what have you. When a dependent clause is by itself, that's also considered a sentence fragment. So you need to add more information in order to complete the sentence. The examples I have written here, editing a paper today. You describe the verb, which is editing. You have the paper, which is your direct object. And you say when, which is today. But there's no subject here. You don't explain who's editing a paper today, and that's a necessary part of the sentence. So just editing a paper today is a sentence fragment. The next example we have here, because it is due tomorrow, this is considered a dependent clause because what you did here is you started it with conjunction. Because starting a sentence with a conjunction is generally incorrect. There's a few exceptions, but for the most part, it's incorrect. Dependent clauses cannot be standalone, so you're going to want to adjust the sentence so that it's correct. The way we would put together our solution here is to fill in the missing information depending on what the sentence is. If you're missing a subject, just make sure to add that. If you're missing the verb, make sure to add that. If your fragment is a dependent clause, you can either turn it into an independent clause by removing any conjunctions or unnecessary words, or you can add it on to the end of an independent clause to give it the context it needs. So what we did here is we changed the examples so that they're correct. This first one now is the student is editing a paper today, the student being our subject now, so it is a complete sentence because now it has the subject and the verb. Next, because it is due tomorrow, is now changed to he is working on it because it is due tomorrow. He is working on it is our new independent clause here. And the dependent clause, because it is due tomorrow, just further explains why he's working on it. So in this independent clause we added, he is the subject and is working is our predicate. And then together these would be a complete sentence. Alternatively, we could just turn it is due tomorrow into its own complete sentence without the conjunction because it is no longer a dependent clause. You have your subject and your verb, and that's all you really need to have an independent clause. There's no conjunction to signal to the reader that this is a dependent clause. It is due tomorrow is a standalone sentence that can function correctly. So going forward, here's just some general tips on how to avoid these mistakes in the future. So you're going to want to identify parts of your sentence while you're writing so that you can better keep track of whether or not you're missing components of your sentence. So this means if you're writing out a confusing sentence, just make sure you can underline the subject and identify that, underline the predicate. If you need to, beyond that, you can point out what the direct object is, if you have any conjunctions you're using, and this will help you kind of map out whether or not your sentence is correct. Next step, understand every punctuation mark you use. As I said before, comma splices are very common. They're an incorrect use of the comma, and a lot of people use them. It's just very common that people do that. So understanding where to put a comma and when you don't need a comma is important. When you can use a semicolon in the place of a comma. Make sure you always have periods at the end of your sentences, things like that. Finally, don't begin new sentences with conjunctions. As I said before, it's generally incorrect and it can create sentence fragments very easily. So don't start sentences with and or because or but. It's better to leave that as a dependent clause combined with a previous sentence. And that kind of connects your ideas without having to separate them into different sentences and then start with a conjunction that's a sentence fragment. So that's all for me today. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful time writing.